Indiana blasted Purdue inside Assembly Hall 73-58. That is Purdue's fourth consecutive loss. The win for IU lifts them above the bubble cutoff, according to everything I've seen. So Joe Lunardi's bracketology wasn't updated when I looked, but Jerry Palm's was with CBS Sports, and IU was at the top of the last four in category. So theoretically, I suppose there were three teams below them that would be bumped out first. So IU was not safely in the field, but pretty darn close. And if they keep winning, then they would be absolutely in great position to take care of business in the Big Ten tournament, take care of business the rest of the regular season, and put themselves in position to be a tournament team. We'll talk about sort of their tournament chances in a moment, but the takeaways for Indiana in this game. Number one, the fact that the crowd and the fact that the building, Assembly Hall, was rocking as hard as it was is phenomenal to see. I was in Bloomington, but I wasn't at the game at the time. Tickets were a bit too steep for me, but I was on Kirkwood shortly after the victory, and again, buzzing. Like the Assembly Hall clearly was rocking. Bloomington was abuzz the whole day. That was phenomenal to see on Sunday. But it spread to the players, and the players had a sense of fight and a sense of drive and a sense of spirit that you don't typically see in teams that have coaches that were booed earlier in the season, or coaches that are being chanted, like fans are chanting for their coaches firing, right? Typically that isn't the recipe for a tournament team, and it's certainly not, but somehow still, just like Luke Goody said earlier in the year, this team got it right, and they're putting themselves in position to be an NCAA tournament team, and they'll probably end up going to Dayton if they get there. They'll probably end up being in the first four if they get there. But if they do, the rest of the regular season in the Big Ten tournament really sets them up for success to qualify for the NCAA tournament. And once you're there, who knows what can happen when you get there. Once that scoring run in the second half started going, and once the crowd got into it, there was no stopping it. There was no slowing them down. That's how you beat an arch rival at home. You give the fans something to cheer for. You ride that wave. That's exactly what the Indiana Hoosiers did in this game, and they picked up an absolutely phenomenal win. Everyone on this team did their exact job. Everyone fulfilled the role that they were supposed to perfectly. And this is the thing with Purdue, and we'll talk about Purdue in a moment, but sort of their inconsistency is not so much an inconsistency across games with the entire team. It's inconsistency across games between the players on the team. Which ones are on, which ones are performing well. Usually they've scraped by and they've been okay because, yeah, if Braden Smith has a bad game and Fletcher Allaire only drops 15, it'll be fine, right? Because they can beat these inferior opponents just because they do have the superior roster. But now we're facing a stretch of the season where they played four, maybe if we're considering IU a tournament team, Purdue's playing four tournament teams in a row, and they're dropping each one of those games. They've now lost four straight. Again, we'll talk about Purdue in a moment. But it's the fact that some players just are absent for games, and you don't see them. And then the players that pop off one night, 2 nights later, might completely be irrelevant. IU, to me, recently with their successes, everyone on the team has been filling the role they need to fill. Everyone on the team has been doing the exact job that we need to see them fulfill. In this game, Trey Galloway and Malik Renew, they got to the rim. They led in scoring. We talked last week about Purdue and how they struggle to protect the rim without Zach Edey, and how teams like Michigan State and like Wisconsin, they've just been flying downhill, and they've been getting into the blocks, and whether it's alley-oop dunks or whether it's drives to the basket, they're putting shots up and they're scoring, and Galloway and Renew very easily attacked that. They combined for 30 in this game. They both tied as the leading scorer with 15. Luke Goody shot well. He knocked in some clutch threes. I believe he was 2 for 6 from 3 and 4 for 9 from the field, which obviously isn't mind-blowing. But Luke Goody, that's exactly what he's here for, right? He transferred into IU to be the guy that can hit a corner three here and there, that really makes a difference in close possession games, right? If it's a one-possession game, he'll make it a two-possession game. If they're down a possession, he'll tie it up, something along those lines. Luke Goody was shooting well, and he was taking the types of shots and hitting the types of shots that you would want a guy like him to take and hit, and that was fantastic to see from him. Omar Ballo, primarily defensively, counteracted Trey Kaufman-Renn phenomenally. He added 12 himself. He held TKR to 9. Trey Kaufman-Renn, a guy that in the last week has put up 32, right? Omar Ballo, defensively, did a fantastic job. IU out-rebounded Purdue, and it wasn't even close. Anthony Leal was a great disruptor. He had 3 steals and 2 blocks. Miles Rice had 3 steals. This team looked phenomenal, right? Everyone did exactly what they were supposed to do, and no one really strayed outside of their box, right? Omar Ballo, we knew He needed to rebound the basketball, and he needed to defend Trey Coppin-Renn. That's what he did. He put up 12. That was phenomenal. Omar Ballo did exactly what we needed from him. Luke Goody, we didn't need anything from him besides a couple nice threes here and there, and that's exactly what we saw in Luke Goody, This IU team, everyone did exactly what they needed to do to put forth a winning effort, and this shows what IU can be at its best, because remember, IU was ranked number 17 in the AP poll to start the year. This is, in theory, a top 20 roster. This is close to a top 15 roster in the country. This is undoubtedly a tournament roster, and of course, preseason rankings don't necessarily fully define the quality of your roster. Of course, there's players that improve and decline throughout the season, and whatever else. We saw Renew get hurt earlier in the year. But still, this IU team, right, this is a roster that's capable of very, very high heights, I suppose. There's got to be a better way to say that, but this IU roster is capable of a lot, and it's proved by the fact that they were a top 25 team in the AP poll before the year began. And, obviously Mike Woodson maybe isn't the guy for the job, whatever the problems are fundamentally within this Hoosiers program. This IU team is putting themselves in position to make the tournament and potentially make a run once they get there. This is the reminder that when IU is playing well, they can not only win, but dominate a top, at the time, 15 opponent in Purdue. And yes, I understand it's a conference game on the road. Yes, I understand the fact this is IU Purdue and anything can happen in any year. But IU's had moments, right? They beat Michigan State, who very well probably is going to win the Big Ten, in my opinion. Michigan State will. And is going to be probably a 2 seed and have a real chance to make a Final Four and win a national championship. If IU knocked off Michigan State and Purdue in the same month, then clearly they're doing something right. And I understand the fact that there was a loss to UCLA somewhere in between there. But still, this team, this program, this roster at its best is capable of honestly anything within reach at this point. Absolutely capable of making the NCAA tournament, absolutely capable of making the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, and maybe more than that. I'm not going to suggest that that's what's going to happen, but I certainly think that if you saw IU in the Sweet 16, yeah, I'd be surprised, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it's absolutely outrageous. This is a roster and a team capable of a lot. They played fantastic defense in this game, which is something I want to shout out. Purdue averages 77 points per game on the year. They were held to 58 in Assembly Hall. Trey Coppin-Renn was limited. Braden Smith was well defended. There were turnovers all over the board. Purdue turned the ball over 16 times. Multiple times IU was getting some turnovers in the backcourt. It was a fantastic showing. Anthony Leal, to me, was the defensive player of the game. Just across the board, Indiana flying to the basketball, disrupting, rebounding, right? It was complimentary basketball in its best form, and it really showed to me just how much IU can be capable of. Once again, defensively, offensively, it was a perfect game, in my opinion, in Bloomington from the Hoosiers, and I'm looking forward to seeing where they can take this, especially knowing just how manageable their schedule is the rest of the way. Just keep winning is the motto for the rest of the year, and obviously that's not something that's it's not an idea that is new, right? It's not something that people wouldn't expect to hear. But this team's above the cut line, right? This is a tournament team right now, according to Jerry Palm, which is one of the bracketologists I trust the most. This IU team is capable of making the NCAA tournament. It's there. If it keeps winning, it's there. And the rest of the schedule is very, very manageable. They've got a West Coast swing in there. They play Penn State at home. They beat Penn State on the road earlier in the year. Penn State is, I think, last in the Big Ten. That obviously at home, especially, that's a very, very manageable game. IU will probably knock off Penn State in that one. Then they have the same West Coast swing that Purdue went on earlier in the year. They go to Washington and they go to Oregon. That concerns me. The Washington game should be winnable. It's another team that probably isn't going to qualify for the Big Ten tournament. Keep in mind, there's 18 teams in the Big Ten. Only 15 make the Big Ten tournament. IU will be totally fine, obviously, but I think Washington's in jeopardy down there. Penn State's probably out. But the road game against Oregon's been playing great. Jackson Shellstead has looked great. They just knocked off Wisconsin in a big time game in overtime. Oregon is probably in the 6-7 seed range. They're certainly a team that could be capable of making the Sweet 16. I'm afraid of Oregon for IU, and I think that being the second game on a West Coast swing could be concerning. IU hasn't had to travel that way yet. Typically what's going on is teams will go out to play Oregon and Washington, or go out and play USC and UCLA, and then USC and UCLA and Oregon and Washington, those pairs, they come to these East Coast teams. And they play them in stretches, right? And so right, Purdue earlier in the year, they went to Washington, they went to Oregon, and then that was the West Coast swing. It was a 2-game West Coast swing, and that was it. IU hasn't had that yet, right? That they haven't had to play a game in that sense. They had UCLA and they had USC both at home earlier on in the year. So IU is in this situation where they're going on a West Coast swing for the first time. That is concerning because, again, that hasn't happened in a conference. They haven't played conference games in a West Coast swing yet because this is the first year of these new West Coast teams coming in here. This is the first time, unfortunately for IU, late in the year where they're going to have to go out on the West Coast swing like that and take on Oregon and Washington. The Oregon game concerns me for that reason. And even if they win, then they have to come home and play another team like Ohio State, who is, on the bubble cut line and potentially capable of making the NCAA tournament as well. Ohio State has done some great things. They beat Purdue as well earlier in the year in Mackey Arena, one of the first teams to do that in a long time. So IU, right, moving forward, Penn State, very winnable game. Washington, very winnable game. Oregon game, winnable, obviously, but it's going to be difficult. And then coming back for Ohio State in the last game of the year also is potentially a trap spot. That's interesting moving forward, right, is the quad one opportunities against Oregon and Ohio State. They picked up another big-time quad one win against Purdue. This is where things get a bit tricky, right? The next 2 games, they just have to take care of business and put them away, and then it's time to really hone in because how you close out the regular season dictates what is going to be asked of you in the Big Ten tournament. If IU wins out in the regular season, they have much less pressure on them in the Big Ten tournament. First of all, because they'll be playing lower quality opponents, but also because they'll be asked to win fewer games in order to cement their spot in the NCAA tournament when we get to Selection Sunday. But the second you start dropping those regular season games, all of a sudden, the more you're going to be asked to do in the Big Ten tournament, and we know how much of a gauntlet that tournament's going to be. It's going to be difficult. It's worrisome to me. Just those last 2 games there of having to go to Oregon and then turn around and then play Ohio State in your own building. That's concerning, but it's a manageable schedule. They are above the cut line. If they just keep winning, everything will be fine. The next step is Penn State at home. Again, very, very winnable game. I'm excited to see what IU puts together for that one. Indiana's in the field right now. Somehow, some way, Indiana's found themselves there, and as long as they keep winning, they'll stay there, most likely. Obviously, there's bid thieves, and the bubble is chaotic no matter what, but Indiana's put themselves in position to succeed. They just need to take care of business from here on out. And this win over Purdue was a great help in making sure that was the case.